Sri Lankans have cast their ballots in a snap general election. The polls will determine whether or not the island nation wants to further empower its new president, Anura Kumara Dissanayake. Now, as Sri Lanka struggles to recover from a crushing financial crisis, Dissanayake seeks to secure a majority in the parliament to push his policies.
There is a new political culture that has been developing in our country. As seen in the last presidential election, we should celebrate our victory without hurting or harming anyone. This is not something that can just happen in one election and disappear in the other. This should be our political culture.
Voting began at 7 a.m. and ended at 4 p.m. local time. Counting will begin shortly. In the latest, the Commissioner General of Elections has said that the first election results will be released by 10 p.m. local time. The final results are expected by Friday evening. There are 225 parliamentary seats on the ballot. 17 million voters of the island nation will be exercising their right, with over 8,800 candidates contesting the election. The parliamentary election process has certain special provisions to it. Of the total 225 seats in the parliament, Sri Lankans vote directly for 196 seats. For the remaining 29, political parties elect lawmakers on the basis of national vote percentage of every party. Just days after he was elected president, Dissanayake had dissolved the parliament on September 24th to clear the way for the general election. The parliament's 5-year term was due to end in August of 2025, but the polls seemed necessary for Dissanayake's National People's Power Party, as the NPP currently has just 3 lawmakers in the outgoing parliament as per the 2020 mandate. The president hopes for a fresh mandate that he needs to push his policies. His main challenger is Sajith Premadasa's SJB, which currently holds 54 seats. This time, several big names have stepped away from the spotlight, like Ranil Wickremesinghe, who lost the presidential elections to Anura Kumara Dissanayake, will not be contesting an election for the first time since 1977, and the Rajapaksa brothers, that's Mahinda and Gotabaya, who were ousted from power after the 2022 economic crisis, also did not participate in the electoral contest. With vote counting scheduled to begin in 2 hours from now, let's listen in what Sri Lankan voters have to say about this election.
As citizens, we like to work in a digitalized environment, right? And we like to have a government where they enable that and they make sure to provide the development into that areas.
Where there is no corruption and the people who are supposed to do their work, do the work they are supposed to do. And everyone is friendly with every other religion, person or racial.
As a citizen of the country, it's our duty to vote and send the right people to parliament. I used my vote today to carry out that duty.
We need to select the people who can serve the country without any corruptions. So that's why we came here to vote, cast a vote to select the correct candidate.
Now, correspondent Dasonia Thaura has been tracking these elections very closely. She sends us a report from Colombo.
Security is beefed up outside Royal College, Colombo, which is one of the 2 main counting stations for the Colombo district, which will be counting the ballots of Sri Lanka's general election. Now, security personnel stand guard in and around these premises in anticipation of further ballot boxes that are to be transported to this venue. Earlier on in the day, election officials made it clear that counting will begin with the postal votes, which were voted early on before today's poll date, after which they will move towards counting the ballots that were casted during the day today in each district. Stay with WION as we bring you the very latest of Sri Lanka's parliamentary polls live from Colombo.
And to get us some perspective in this crucial election in Sri Lanka, Bhavani Fonseca is joining us from Colombo. She is a lawyer and senior researcher at the Centre for Policy Alternatives. Thank you so much for joining us on this broadcast, ma'am.
Thank you.
The Election Commission of Sri Lanka is estimating that the voter turnout might be around 65%. Isn't that low for a country like Sri Lanka that usually records between 70 to 80%? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, a couple of reasons. And I have to say, parliamentary elections, the voter turnout is usually much less than a presidential. This was expected in terms of a lower voter turnout to September's turnout. But there is also particular fatigue among the voters. We've just had a massive election in September, and a few weeks later, we are having the parliamentary elections. So I'm not entirely surprised that it was much less, but I think it's very important to note that, like the September presidential election, today's election was peaceful, it was free and fair. And I think that's a notable difference compared to the previous elections we've had in Sri Lanka.
Right. Ms. Fonseca, as you rightly pointed out, these parliamentary elections come about 50 days after the presidential elections. So one would assume that the voters are still on the same lines of how they voted back in September. How optimistic are you that Anura Kumara Dissanayaka's party will get a majority?
Well, I would say there is a much more optimism and curiosity towards the president's party, that's the NPP, compared to the September election. And that's going by the campaigns that were there just before in terms of the last few days. And the president visiting most of the districts across Sri Lanka, where you saw massive crowds coming together to listen to the president. And several of those who attended those campaigns and who said they're going to vote for the NPP did not vote for the president in September. So I would say the president's party is likely to gain from the last election. But considering the voter turnout, we'll have to see when the results start coming out how well they did and how well the opposition parties did. So I think the next couple of hours is going to be critical, and in the next couple of hours we'll see the postal voting and soon followed by the district results. But I think the president's party would have gained considering the support he had among sections of society.
Right. Since you say that, paint a picture for us. In case AKD's party does not get a majority, what does that mean for the future of Sri Lanka and its taxpayers?
Well, the president himself has said, and his own colleagues have said, that they don't want a two-thirds majority, considering the past experiences Sri Lanka has had with governments who've had two-thirds majority. Even today, after voting, he made that public statement. I think the party is looking to a simple majority, or a bit more than a simple majority. That's over 113 seats. And I think for moving reforms, this is sufficient as long as they're able to work with particular opposition parties. And I think for a healthy democracy, it's not just a strong government one needs, but a strong opposition. An opposition that can act as a check, can act as an oversight in terms of executive action. So it's very important to see who gets the numbers in parliament, who can form government. There is no clear indicator yet. I think in the next couple of hours, we would know this. And then it's dependent on who gets into government and who is heading particular ministries. But that also said, opposition plays a critical role in terms of committees, who is going to lead in certain positions in parliament. So all of this is important. So it's not just the government, but the government being able to work across parties to get through key reforms.
All right, Ms. Fonseca, thank you so much for your insights. Always good to speak to you.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.